Welcome back once again to Richard's Toy Room. Today we're back to toys. As you can see before you here on this table, we have 4 vintage 1970s MEGO action figures. Spider-Man, Joker, Shazam with no head, and an Action Jackson. They all need to be repaired, restrung, cleaned. So basically, that's what this video is going to be about today. Here's your Action Jackson. He's on a Type 0 body. The rest of them are a Type 1. In case you didn't know, Type 1 has the metal rivets in the wrists, as you can see here. Type 0, plastic rivets. There was 2 different versions of this. This is the earlier one with the rounded wrist on the one side. You can see the legs do not have any metal rivets. Now these unfortunately have been damaged on the Action Jackson. I don't know if you can see the little hole where the elastic goes through was over tightened and it's split. That's going to also be addressed in this video. We're going to attempt to repair, reinforce this hole so the legs are usable again. The first thing we have to do, take them all apart, take clothes off, assess what needs to be repaired and cleaned, and take it from there. As you see, Spider-Man's pretty wobbly. He needs to be restrung, as do all of them. The classic Type 1 pose, as you can see, ends up like that, with the legs a little bit spread apart. If you look at a drawing of one, that's usually what they look like in silhouette. But the Type 2s, the legs are pushed together because they are not strung with elastic, they're strung with rubber bands. I have a different method of stringing Type 1s, and I'll show you that in this video. Now I got a bunch of elastic here. This is about as close as you can get to the original stuff that MEGO used. You'd have to be a very anal retentive person to tear apart the MEGO and look inside and see that this is not the original elastic. I don't think that's an issue when you're repairing these figures. I mean, that's just like changing the oil in a car. I mean, if it's broken, you need to replace it. I don't think it adds or detracts any value. But I also, on the other hand, do like to use as close to original as possible, not only for looks in case someone, does look in there, but for the way that they actually move and pose. It works better because if you use the wrong size string, you're not going to get a good movement in the limbs. The thin stuff, as you can see, this fits perfectly. The stuff that's too thin, they don't want to hold pose very well. But the stuff that's too thick, they're a lot harder to move. This stuff is, to paraphrase the Three Little Bears, just right. So that's what we're going to use. I've got so much here that I don't know when I'll run out. So let's get these taken completely apart here, so we can get on with this video. You can see the difference here with the rivets in the ankles and knees on the Type 1 as opposed to the Type 0. Now this Spider-Man has some kind of nasty crud on it. I'm pretty sure that that will come off in the wash. And when I say wash, I don't mean washing machine. I mean we're going to clean them in OxyClean and we're going to soak them. This has a run in it right here. Not too bad. I've seen a lot worse. It also has, the seams have come apart a little bit on this right side near the belt here. So we're going to repair that as well. We can't repair the run, unfortunately. But we'll also should be able to clean up these cuffs. Now, Spider-Man has 2 snaps on the back. I believe that means it's an earlier version, if I'm not mistaken. Later ones, they started using 1 snap, probably to save a penny on each one or something. This is a little tight, probably from sitting in a humid basement. They get some slight corrosion and they're hard to pull apart. And unfortunately, the whole thing came off. The threads broke, so we're going to have to sew that back on as well before we get this guy all done. You can see this elastic has just totally deteriorated. Even though it's still intact, it has no elasticity left in it, which requires a replacement. Joker's got a little rub on his nose there, a little kind of a slight gouge. A little bit of dirt. That should come off in the OxyClean wash. Unfortunately, as you can see, his pelvis is broken into 2 pieces here. It's another thing we're going to have to fix. Now, the only problem with this Joker suit is, as you can see, the feet have rubbed through holes in the toe and heel. Now, luckily, on the Joker, he is supposed to have brown shoes, and that will cover most, if not all, of those defects. I'm not saying you should try to hide them if you're going to sell them. I'm just saying, luckily, you can hide them if you want to put them on display, and you would never know that there was holes in his feet. So now you can see the Type 0 is 1-piece molded. It's a sort of a softer plastic than the later revisions on the Type 1s. These are more of a hard styrene plastic, and they're 2 pieces. Now there's a pin up inside the Type 1, and that's part of how I do the alternate stringing, by utilizing that pin which is up near the waist at the top of the pelvis. If you tap them together, you can notice a difference in the sound. That's more of a clicky noise, whereas the Type 0 plastic is more of a kind of a low thud. Now we'll just use some epoxy and glue these pieces together, and it'll be good as new for all intents and purpose. You may notice, if you look closely, that there's some pinholes where somebody had tried to fix it before. But that's what we're going to use, the JB Weld clear epoxy, 5-minute epoxy. Works great. I prefer the clear because it gives you, in case you can see it, it doesn't show up as much. As you see, this one is split apart a little bit here. We'll put a little bit of glue and glue that little part back together so that it doesn't separate anymore. It'll hold strong. And now we're ready to clean everything.